Morning, fellas. How are we?
Good.
Good, mate.
Kicking us off for a new podcast, new week, new podcast.
Good to see you again.
Yeah.
Always.
Travelling well?
How are you, Mick?
Good, guys. Ticking along nicely.
Missed you last week, mate. You had those commitments, so good to have you back.
Good to be back, mate. Good to be back.
How was the camping with the family?
Yeah, nice. Good to get away and have a bit of a break from general life and do some of the things we've spoken about before in terms of those rites of passage and things like that and getting out amongst nature. So it was very enjoyable.
Did you get barefoot?
We were barefoot for the whole weekend.
Oh, lovely.
Nice.
Well done.
Today's topic.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So no phones, no shoes.
Yeah.
Love it.
Well, that's very ancestral,
Yep.
isn't it? Getting back to our ancestral roots.
It is.
As the modern ancestral man, it's hard to do these days. Isn't
Yeah.
it? So barefoot's one of those things that we can do.
Yeah.
Gets us in
And-
touch with nature, bit of grounding.
Yeah.
So that was going to be our topic for today.
And the old ancestral man didn't walk around with his Nike Airs, did he?
No, definitely not.
His Nike Airs were actually his feet.
Yeah.
I'm sure they would have wrapped themselves in something.
Yeah, often I
Maybe a
think
skin.
for climate purposes they had skin, animal skin and fur over their feet.
Yep.
But that would have been only a warming sort of purpose.
You reckon the soles of their feet would have been that hardened that they would have just been, walking around on rocks, treading on anything?
Yeah,
Yeah, for
definitely.
Bit of a comfort thing. I
But
thought
they've
maybe they'd have it for a bit of comfort too.
Yeah, I'd say
Stub
in
your toe on a rock.
mild climates or warmer climates, they would just go barefoot. But I'd say in ice, snowy environments, they would have like a like a moccasin sort of thing. Like the leather of the animal
Yeah.
on the sole of their foot to sort of protect them from the icy cold. Maybe with the animal fur on the top of the foot.
Yeah.
I've seen images of that.
Yeah.
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 You'd reckon they definitely wouldn't have wrapped their feet in tight like we do with shoes these days if
No.
they were making a crude moccasin or a bit of protection for their feet.
Yeah.
They certainly wouldn't have pulled all their toes in together and had a big bloody heel on the back and all that sort of stuff, would they? It would have been quite a natural, just a thin piece of natural material, some leather or some fur, depending on what side they've used.
Yep.
And I think the important thing is their foot would have been able to spread like it's meant to.
Definitely.
I'm sure the ancestral man let his body do the talking, and
I reckon.
anatomically we've been designed to be bipedal, walk upright. All those muscles and ligaments, tendons in our feet, legs, calves are designed for us to walk without big honking shoes on.
Yeah. Can you imagine putting a pair of Nike Airs on a primeval man?
Wouldn't know what to do.
He would have freaked out.
He would have been like a baby deer that's just been born trying to stand up and walk,
Yeah.
You see him come out. And
Or a baby
Speaking
human.
of babies, that was
Yeah.
going to be my point.
A baby
yeah.
human. You look at a baby who gets shoes on their feet for the first time, they are fucked.
Yeah.
They can't walk properly.
Yeah.
It totally ruins their sense of balance and coordination.
Yep.
It ruins their gait.
Yeah.
Absolutely does.
One
And
of
at that
those-
important time too, when you're young, that's when you're really formulating those gaits and how you're going to walk as an adult.
Yeah.
So that's probably the most crucial time. You got
Yeah.
the feet, the bones in your feet are forming.
Yep.
So you're forming your arch up until about the age of 4 or 6.
And that arch is another thing that is a wonder of evolution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're, like you say, if you're putting heavy, constrictive, thick-soled shoes on a kid, you're going to influence the way that arch forms, how they walk. That's
For
going
sure.
to follow them.
One of the many benefits is the sensory feedback your feet give you. So wrapping them up in shoes, kids can't get that feedback. And you see them when they put them on for the first time. They're kind of walking a bit funny. They're trying to flick them off.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem right to them.
Yeah. And you look at a baby's foot, it is thick and it's muscular. Its toes are spread. The toes aren't all crunched together. And that's how our foot should be. Our foot should be a muscular piece of a part of our body. It shouldn't be a skinny, bony, narrow, pointed appendage that it is after years and years of wearing shoes. This is a topic that's really, I really believe strongly in it. I haven't worn shoes, normal shoes or sneakers for, I reckon, maybe 6-7 years now. I haven't bought a pair of runners for that that amount of years. I exercise in Vivos, all those foot gloves, which look really weird, and I get the piss taken out of me by my kids' friends. But I don't care, and I just look upon people now wearing sneakers or narrow pointed shoes as a little bit ignorant.
Yeah.
I just think you're denying yourself. Like, our feet are probably the most important muscle or part of our body. They support everything. They support our posture. They support our weight. And just through culture, through the strict adherence to this norm of wearing shoes, we are just shattering the whole structure of our feet. And then when we worry about 40 years or 50 years of wearing traditional shoes, we wonder why our back health is shit. We wonder why we've got inactive glutes.
Knees are bad.
Knees are bad. Like, our joints are bad. Our posture is bad. Imagine being a lady wearing high heel shoes. Years and years of doing that, you're going to have shortened calf muscles. You're going to have major postural problems. Yeah. What's those things you get? It's like a stone feeling in your foot.
Bunion.
Not a bunion. A bunion's that thing that happens to that
on the
plantar
side.
fasciitis.
You mean corns and that sort of thing?
It's a neuroma. I think it's a neuroma where there's the ligament and the swelling of the ligament and bone part of that ball of your foot, and it's like you're walking on a stone.
Right.
That often is an effect of ladies wearing high heel shoes in particular, because all that weight goes onto the ball of their foot.
Well, even running shoes aren't. You look at running shoes; they are not designed with the user in mind. They're designed for you to land as a heel strike with all of the force of that strike going up through your leg. So if you think about your arch, your Achilles tendon, your calf, your knee, your hip, it is all designed to bend so that you are a forefoot striker. Mm-hmm. So you're running on your forefoot, you're using the muscles of your legs, the tendons, to shock absorb that impact.
Yep.
And you look at Nike running shoes, there's a brand at the moment, Hoka, that they look like a surfboard, and they're about 6 inches thick. And I see everyone wearing them. I think the same as you, Dave. I was like, how do they wear that? Because what that is then teaching them to do is run incorrectly. They're a long distance running shoe. So you put them on, say, I can run further because I've got more padding. The heel toe drop, which is the difference between the front of the shoe and the back of the shoe, is 5 centimeters difference.
Yeah.
It's crazy. We're designed to have flat feet, strike on your forefoot so that those muscles are absorbing that shock. And you run with those on, and everyone strikes with their heel, with their legs straight, knee straight, so that all that impact's going up through there.
Yeah.
And it's just causing so many running injuries.
Well, the research shows, sorry, mate.
Oh,
the research shows that that's a 3 times higher impact on your joints through that heel first contact.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Sort of, I think there's been a couple of different movements in the barefoot scene. Sort of one in the mid early 2000s, and there's one about 2010 or 11. So there's a lot of studies around 2011, 2012, but barefoot running, biomechanics and implications for running injuries, says there 79% of runners are injured once a year or injured in any given year.
Yeah,
so
right.
80% of the people that are running just about are injured. And they say it's through poor biomechanics.
Yep.
In this study by Altman et al., 2013. Yeah. So imagine that.
There's nothing more natural than running, is there? So it doesn't really make sense if you think about it that just the act of running should have such a high injury rate. So we're clearly doing something wrong. And like you say, I mean, if you've got these ridiculous shoes with the huge heel, it almost makes it really hard to run on your toes, doesn't it, or on your forefoot, because there's such a big difference.
Yeah.
Even if you try to run with correct form, if you're wearing those accentuated shoes with that big step, you really can't. Like it's a real effort to try and run striking with your forefoot rather than with your heel because it's just designed. It's got that the back part of the heel hanging down. It's waiting to go.
But but on that, Smitty, when you do run barefoot, you are forced to run on the ball of your foot.
Yes.
You can't heel strike.
No, you can't.
Yeah.
Well, you learn pretty quickly, don't you?
Yeah,
Your
that's
bloody,
right.
Your body just actually functionally cannot do it. So I'm interested then to hear you, Mickey Mac, because you've done a lot of long distance running, and you have too, Jonesy. And I guess it comes back to long distance running being an unnatural ancestral thing. We wouldn't have ran long distances. We would have just sprinted shorter distances, therefore running on the ball of our foot. Primeval man wouldn't have ran like a marathon distance.
I don't know.
Barefoot.
I reckon they might have walked, run.
Walked, run, but that's not a long distance
sprint.
run. So
not like a constant jog of like, I'm just going to run at a set pace for 42 kilometres. Yeah. I don't think that's very ancestral, really.
Yeah. No. But
if you go right back to primitive man.
Isn't that part of what they say is that the way that some hunting that we did was the ability to outlast animals. So animal would run off. Yeah. We would sort of chase it down slowly. The animal would get tired, then they'd run off again. And then we had the endurance to then, when we 4 or 5 hours down the track, we've been chasing this animal. This animal's exhausted.
Yep.
But we're not. So instead of, having to shoot it, we just go over and grab it because it's whacked from exhaustion.
Do you reckon that's really a thing? Because to me, if I just think about that from a logical point of view, okay, I'm going to do a marathon to go and catch my little bunny rabbit that I'm trying to eat for dinner. That doesn't seem like a sustainable method to catch food. Like it might have been a very...
I wouldn't have thought a bunny rabbit.
You know what I mean, but a very irregular occurrence.
Maybe like a woolly mammoth or a deer or something. I reckon that makes more sense.
But man wouldn't have been required to run that whole distance to run that animal down. He would have...
but needed some endurance, right?
Yeah, he would have endurance, but that could have been walking and jogging.
Yeah.
Or walking. He wouldn't have been running that whole distance that whole time. So that's why I'm interested into you guys, long distance runners, I couldn't imagine you wearing those Vivo barefoot gloves for a long distance run.
Yeah, I did my last marathon I did in those Vivos.
No shit.
Yeah.
Wow.
How did you pull up from that, CJ? Was it a noticeable recovery or difference in recovery, I should say?
Yes and no.
Were your calves a bit sore?
No, not any. Well, we'll get back to. We'll let Mickey Mac go because I've got a couple of studies that I wanted to talk about.
Yeah,
that'll
cool.
highlight that too.
Oh yeah.
We'll throw to Mick and then we'll. Yeah, because he might have a bit more padding on his shoe. Let's find out.
Well, I mean, I think it's an interesting one to dissect here because if we're talking about ancestral man, probably the most, and also looking at that in the context of potentially what sort of ancestral men weren't wearing runners and converting that into running and all that sort of thing. Well, the fastest endurance runners on the planet are from African nations. And it wasn't until probably the last 25 years they actually started running with shoes. So, given that certainly, and I don't want to be all-encompassing here, so I want to be careful how I put this across because certainly there is a westernized component to the way that those African nations are living now, but there are also, certainly deep-rooted elements of tribal living over there. And in terms of running, there's books written on this by Western white people who travel over to Africa, and they go and there's one of them that's called Running with the Kenyans, and they go and they have trained with these world-class African runners for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, and all of their training is done barefoot. So we are talking trail running on, pebbles, rocks, all sorts of things, and all of their running is done barefoot. And I think that the comparison here is that we genetically as well, we haven't been running around barefoot, certainly in my family lineage, for a long, long, long time. So I think there is definitely a component of this genetics, and how these tribes people are raised and what they're used to, and the changes that are then genetically bred into all of us through either wearing shoes or not wearing shoes and all that sort of thing. And I think that's, I actually remember Jonesy. I'm excited for him to talk a little bit about this, because I remember with some of your longer runs in the lead up to that, we built you up. I think we were talking a lot about this at work, Jonesy, and you built up to running the full distance over quite a period of time. So I think from memory, you started with sort of 3 to, quite short runs, and then you build up to sort of far longer runs. For me, I try and do at least 1 run a week on the grass barefoot, and I'll make that sometimes an interval-based session. So I do notice that when obviously I'm not capable at present of running on the road barefoot at pace, but when I run barefoot on the grass, I notice that my whole my running mechanics change completely. And
for the better or worse?
Well, I think you would find that I'm running
more efficient.
I'm running more efficiently in a much more primal way. I'm up on my toes. In terms of the contact time with the ground, it's far less. But if I was to go and do that for long periods, so at the moment I'm in preparation for a run in a couple of weeks. I'm running up over 30 Ks in training at the moment for my long run. If I was to go and try and run that barefoot, my body would break down completely. So I think there's a lot to be said for genetics in this as well. And I think certainly as white Westerners, we can train our feet up to handle longer periods of time running barefoot. But I think we're a lot less likely to convert as naturally as, say, ancestral people still living in that way, like people over in Africa, or even probably some of our Indigenous people in Australia.
Yeah, it definitely takes after being years of encased in foot coffins, as a friend likes to put it.
Yeah.
It takes some time to get your mechanics right to be able to run that way, and not run as a heel striker, and then getting the adaptation, muscular, ligament, etc., to be able to then run consistently barefoot. I think it's and that's what I was trying to highlight with a couple of studies when it was big, sort of maybe mid 2010. Nike brought out some. They're called Nike Free Runners. I don't know if you remember these, Mick.
Oh, yeah.
They were sort of designed to be more of a barefoot type shoe. And that's sort of what got me transitioning to barefoot. I mean, at the time, I was having some injuries. And I stumbled on a book called Born to Run. I don't know if you've read that one, Mick. It's a cracker. Christopher McDougall. He goes and runs with some tribes throughout various different cultures, and they're all running barefoot. He was a runner who had lots of injuries, and then sort of found barefoot running. So I initially started on the grass a few times a week, ran a few laps, built up to, and then I had got my Nike Free Runners, had those, and then built up running barefoot on the concrete. I now have the Vivos, which are great. Wear those pretty much everywhere. But it does take a bit of a transition, and the initial barefoot craze kind of copped a bit of a whack, because people were saying, well, people are actually getting more injured. So there was a 2013 study here. Barefoot running, does it prevent injuries?
Yeah.
So at the time, they did their science. They got 3 different groups. One had cushioned shoes, one had barefoot shoes, and one had, minimalist shoes they called them, and one had went barefoot. And their conclusion from the study was barefoot running causes more injuries. But what happened was, if you look into the study, they didn't transition properly. So people would, go from running, shod running, what they call it, or heel striking, to no shoes at all, and then, of course, they're going to get injured.
Yeah.
So there was a 2019 study which kind of contradicted that one, adaptation of running biomechanics to repeated barefoot running, a randomized control study, which did pretty much the same experiment, but they called it habituation. So they got people into
transition
yep, into barefoot running. And what they found was the recommendation, or the conclusion of the study was a recommendation to podiatrists and sports medical doctors that barefoot running is a viable option to reduce running injuries. Yeah. So when it was done right, the study kind of found that barefoot running was the way to go.
And you'd have to therein being a skeptic here, the first study there, who ran the study? Was it a running footwear company?
Yeah.
And was that set up on purpose to initiate those people with barefoot straight away without a transition period, with the knowledge that they're going to get injuries? I just find studies can be sometimes so contrived that it's hard to believe the truth in some of them. But it's good to see that another study was done to sort of do it a proper way.
Well, kind of, I think, jumping straight in, it's a bit naive to think that I could go from wearing thick-soled shoes without changing my biomechanics and making that conscious decision, because you get, you're autonomous when you run to run on your heel if you've been doing that for years.
Yeah.
It takes some conscious thinking and actually going, I need to strike on my forefoot rather than my heel. And you have to think about it.
Yeah.
And who thinks when they run? Well, not usually. So you need to transition into that.
Exactly.
And it was the first few times I did it, it destroyed my calves. I could barely walk up steps.
Yeah.
And you think, oh man, am I doing the right thing? But once you then transition in, it's awesome.
Well, you're undoing 30 or 40 years
That's right.
of negative effects on your feet. You're undoing that. So for a person who's thinking about moving to a more barefoot lifestyle, you have to give yourself time to transition into it. And I definitely agree, mate. My calves were killing me. Yeah. There was soreness, but that's because all those muscles that are involved in efficient walking and efficient running were asleep for 30 or 40 years.
Yeah.
And now they're being woken up.
Yeah.
All those ligaments and all those bones that have just been crushed together with normal footwear, and particularly playing footy. Like footy boots are just like such a restrictive piece of footwear. Yep. And my feet aren't perfect, but I'm trying to undo all those years of long distance running in joggers and playing all those games and training nights in restrictive footy boots. It's a long process.
Yeah. But even if you look at fashion, so if you wanted to be cool, you can't get a shoe that doesn't point.
Shoes. Yeah.
So often they say there's some the Converse Chuck Taylors, people say that they're quite good because they're flat, but they still point your toes to the middle.
Yep.
There's still a point in the middle rather than that large toe box.
Yep. And
then having your big toe out the top, and then they widen so that all your toes can get in.
Yeah. A widened toe box allows your toes to spread. And most of my shoes now are all is it Vivo Barefoot?
Yeah.
Which are sort of enclosed shoes, but with that wider toe box. And a wider toe box has been proven to promote more blood flow to your toes and to all the ligaments around that area. Whereas the narrow or the traditional tapered shoe squeezes all your toes together and creates a lot of deformities. So a lot of foot problems such as bunions, hammer toes, which is where you've seen some particularly older people hammer toes, that the joint in the toe sort of rises, and so the toe becomes crunched.
Like a claw kind of.
Yeah, like a claw.
Yep.
So that's an effect as well. And you know what? We don't often see these side effects until we are an older person. And unfortunately, there's a belief out there that bunions are a hereditary thing. But your grandma and her grandma might have had bunions because they wore restrictive shoes.
Yeah.
I think the big chance we've got with all this information we have moving forward is that we can positively influence what our children do.
Yeah.
So we know that the feet go through a formation phase, and once those bones in the arch of your foot are formed after about the age of 4 or 6, well then that sort of bony structure does not change. So after that, we can change our gait, we can change our musculature, so we can still sort of manipulate our ability to operate in barefoot shoes. But like you spoke about, there's that big changeover period. Whereas, ideally, if you started from childhood and you gave your kid the best start to life, so you made sure that they were walking around barefoot when they're learning to walk, so that straight away that gait is favouring, like how it's supposed to be naturally. And then maybe we give them just like a thin leather shoe or something like that, like a 0-step shoe where their foot is able to spread, and then we really nurture that correct development from childhood, then I think you could run another study with those children down the track, and they're going to have a very low rate of injury when they're running compared to adults who are trying to do that changeover.
Yeah.
Because like you say, science is very flawed, and it'd be like telling a new runner to go and run, 40 Ks at a time. They're going to break down. They're going to get hurt because you just can't do it. There's like a changeover period, and it's the same with
adaptation.
Adaptation,
Yeah.
like using those new muscular chains in different ways, changing your gait. All that sort of stuff can't happen overnight, but we do have that unique ability now. We've got this knowledge that barefoot is beneficial, that if you were clever about how you raised your children, then you could indeed sort of nurture that from the beginning, get all those the walking gait right, get the structure of the bone in the foot for the arch development right, and then I think you're really going to give them a lifelong benefit of having really healthy feet, perfect gait, and I would dare say that they would be at a very low chance of injury compared to someone who's trying to come back from changing around how they do it in adulthood.
Yeah, definitely, mate. Totally agree. But unfortunately, then they hit teenage years and fashion kicks in.
That'd be cool, yeah.
And I've tried to promote Vivo barefoots to my kids. Not interested. My young bloke, he's 14. He's got good, thick, muscular feet, and his toes are wide. And I'm to the point now where I think he's sort of a bit more aware of his health and his behaviours and how that affects his health. I want to put it to him now in the next school year about getting a black pair of school shoes of Vivos with a wide toe box, and I'll let you know how I go. But teenage years with fashion, it's
difficult.
It can set you back. But I reckon, Smitty, if you've established those foundation years with good foot health, then that might hopefully get them through those teenage years where they're more concerned about what their shoes look like, as to how they perform.
I think if your skeleton like has formed that correct arch, then you're not going to lose that. That's not really going to change over time. And then, like you say, if you do go through your teenage years and you go through the fashion phase and you wear some poor shoes, I think it's going to be a lot easier for you to go back to that first learned way of walking, gait, all that sort of stuff. So without having the science to back it up, I would imagine that would be an easier changeover.
Yeah, and you talked about the arch, and that is the critical part of your foot health, is having that strong arch.
Yeah.
There's a concept, there's a thing on our foot anatomy called the first ray, and the first ray is a line from the tip of your big toe to the first cuneiform bone, which is the bone that sort of sticks out if you do get a bunion. And so that line between that big toe and that bone is called your first ray. And a functional first ray, or a strong structural base of that first ray, is associated with or contributes to a strong foot arch. And so then from your foot arch, a strong foot arch, you've got then increased efficiency of propulsion when you walk and run, and you've also got increased stability and balance. So there's you can test your first ray functionality by just keeping all your 4 toes on the ground and lifting your big toe alone. So by doing that, you are, and it takes some concentrating to do that, to lift your big toe on its own with your other 4 toes staying on the ground.
Standing?
Standing or sitting. Yeah, sitting. Give it a go. But if you can manage that or exercise that first ray, then you're keeping your arch in good health as well. And you can look at people in the gym who are squatting, for example. Their knees might dip in. You can see their ankles dip in. Often that is an indicator of a weak arch. Even just looking at someone from behind, you look at their feet pronating inwards. That's a sign of a weak arch. And there's also a connection between your big toe and your glute. So this big toe glute connection is sort of a thing where as you walk and your foot lifts to walk, your toes are planted. Your big toes are the last thing to leave. Your foot becomes rigid and becomes a platform for propulsion. That movement there engages your calf and your Achilles, and then that progresses up to the hip, which is a long way away from your foot. But that also then activates your the full hip extension. So if you're doing a full stride, your hip will be in a fully extended position, which therefore activates your glute. So often what we do with wearing our shoes, that big toe being the last point of contact and that propulsion of our foot becoming rigid and employing the calf and the Achilles. When we're wearing shoes, we lose that connection. And so therefore, that inactive glute becomes an issue, so which affects a lot of different things. So that can affect your lower back, can affect your whole. Your glutes are a massively important muscle in our movement and our bodily function. So we can lose that connectivity. So
can I ask you a question there?
Mm-hmm.
So based on that, are you saying completely barefoot is best for that? As in, because I mean, I love those minimalist shoes. I use them all the time, but being barefoot is definitely better. You get that sensory feedback. And what you're kind of describing there, I think may be limited if you did have minimalist shoes on. Do you think? Is that what you mean just completely barefoot?
Yeah, or minimalist shoes. Like any.
So you reckon you can still do that in the minimalist shoes?
I think so, yeah. I mean, even try it in your normal sneakers. You probably won't find that you'll be able to read the big toe, but you know what I mean? Easier.
You can't
as
see
if you were in minimalist or barefoot shoes.
Yeah.
You won't be able to identify that big toe connection on the ground and then that glute activation as well as you walk.
Yeah.
But give it a try. I mean, I'd recommend anyone just take your shoes off and walk. Take a decent stride and just focus on your big toe leaving the ground and you're fully extending your hip, which means pretty much your back leg is straight, and then that should incorporate your glute as well. So if you can get that working, walking and running will become a more efficient biomechanical process. It's the way we're supposed to walk, but and when that sort of becomes nullified or dulled, we take shorter strides, we take shorter steps. Some people you might even notice people walking with their feet splayed out. That's a way of the body compensating to get that big toe and glute connection. But see, give it a go. I've tried it, and I've tried when I walk, I try focusing on my big toe, and then as I stride, activating my glute as I walk. And it does make walking, and it's a conscious effort. But if you can do it long enough, that conscious effort will become a habit, and you'll just find that walking becomes a lot easier.
Yeah, interesting.
Do you reckon?
Cool.
I don't know if anyone's looked at this or if you've seen it, but do you think when people are sprinting, do you think they naturally do that? Because when you look at people sprint, it's almost like the most natural expression of running. Like no one sprints on their heels. Like that would be weird. Like people sprint on their toes.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, like when you really speed things up and you're going for that maximum exertion, I wonder if your body does revert into that correct pattern and you are
Definitely, mate.
sort of pushing off with your big toe and sort of doing those methods you spoke about.
You look at a freeze frame of a sprinter with the high knee lift action, and so one knee is high and the other leg on the ground is straight. Their leg is straight, the glute would be engaged, and their toes are obviously in touch with the ground, but the foot is extended. That is the perfect angle, the perfect biometric position to be in.
Isn't that interesting that we can probably all access that, like if we sprint, but as soon as you decide to go for a jog, then all these other, sort of, I guess, bad habits, for want of a better word,
compensations
sort of creep in, or compensations due to your footwear sort of take over and become the norm.
Yeah. For the most natural biomechanical activity that we do, walking, it should be an efficient process. It shouldn't be a hard thing to do.
Also, like, we're probably not made to swing big, heavy shoes off the end of our legs.
No. Yeah, definitely.
We're really designed to have bare feet, aren't we? And obviously you adapt to that, and you would grow stronger muscles to compensate for things like that. But really, like, I noticed that I've got a big, heavy pair of boots at home that I wear, and if you do a day outside in the garden in a big, heavy pair of boots versus in my barefoots, you can tell the difference at the end of the day.
Yeah,
it's just an easier way to be if you've got very lightweight shoes on.
Yeah,
lugging a kilo around on each of the end of your legs is hard work.
It's like if you try and kick a footy with boots on, it feels weird, right?
Yeah.
Like if you have a big, heavy work boot, you try and kick a football, it's just not as easy.
Can't do it. Yeah.
Nah.
Yeah.
Whereas bare feet's actually not too bad kicking a footy.
Yeah. Yep. So can you imagine then over years then of this dulling of your feet muscles and your arch affecting your balance and your posture? It's no surprise then as elderly people have falls on an occurrence because they've lost that that balance and posture. And I read this interesting article that said that in a study, the greater percentage of elderly people who had falls were barefoot at the time, which sort of you would think would contradict what we're saying. But when I thought about it, I thought, well, that makes sense.
If your barefoot mechanics are bad.
Yeah, because their feet have just been shot over 70 or 80 years to the point that it can no longer provide them balance or stability. But when they have their shoes on, they don't have that. They have that stability provided for them, that artificial stability.
So there's all their proprioception.
Definitely, yeah.
Your feet just become these dead things that hang off the end of your legs, and
and you look at an old person's feet; they're just bony, no muscles. They just got nothing to them. So there's no doubt they're going to have a fall because they've got nothing to hold them up with.
Anything they can do to strengthen that up? Walking, as in going barefoot a bit more? Are there specific exercises or?
There's a lot of different exercises that you can just jump on YouTube and find different exercises to strengthen your feet.
I've seen the ball rolling one. There's a really good one for your arch or developing your arch where you put, say if you had, doesn't have to be weights, but if you're in the gym, 2 20-kilo weight plates about a foot distance apart, you have your big toe on one, your heel on the other, and you're trying to kind of create your arch, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Trying to pull the other weight with your big toe back towards the other one.
Yep.
Kind of helps strengthen them up a bit.
Yep. There's also just the towel crunch. So
that's
if anyone doesn't have access to a gym, you can just sit watching the telly and just put a towel under your foot and just crunch the towel with your toes, or just little simple things like standing on one leg.
Yeah.
Standing on one leg activates that first ray, strengthens that first ray, and activates your foot arch. So if anyone's listening now, just stand on one leg and you can feel it kick in. And in actual fact, you can feel when that kicks in, you can feel your glute actually kick in as well to help balance you. So there again lies that connection between your foot and your glute to provide that stability in whatever you're doing.
You're forcing all those stabilizing muscles to work, aren't you, when you're standing on one foot, because you've got to work a lot harder.
Yep.
Yeah. Or what about even just going for a walk on the beach?
Definitely, yeah.
Different surfaces is great
elderly,
too, isn't it?
so I mean the sand is going to sort of contour your foot. It's going to allow your toes to spread.
Yep.
Even if you do fall over, at least you're going to fall in soft sand.
Yeah. Yeah.
Get a bit of earthing. I'm a big fan of earthing. I don't know what you guys think about earthing,
that's another
that's
benefit. Yeah.
One of the amazing benefits of having bare feet, isn't it?
Definitely.
Like actually bare feet is the connection with the earth.
Yep.
There's that theory that we're receiving those donor electrons from the earth, which the earth is rich in, and they have the similar effect to what an antioxidant does. Like an antioxidant is obviously an electron donor. Like if you take vitamin C or any of your antioxidants, their antioxidant effect comes from the donation of electrons, and people believe that you can get that from the earth.
Yeah.
I don't know how to prove that or disprove it, but it seems to me to have some plausibility about it.
Yeah, mate, there's a lot of studies out there that are for and against it.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, if there's a potential positive, give it a go. You know, apparently there's like blood flow increases. You know, it can help relieve stress or just give you a bit more of a feeling of well-being. Why not give it a crack?
It's like you see the cliche, like the New York stock market executive going out at lunchtime and taking his shoes off for a couple of minutes and walking on the tiny little patch of grass they've got.
Well, Richard
to
Gere did that.
Yeah,
Richard Gere did that on Pretty Woman.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's maybe where my brain's getting it from. But
great movie. I love Julia Roberts.
To get the earthing and grounding, you do need it to be natural. It can't be asphalt or bitumen or wood.
I reckon a nice walk in the ocean.
Yeah,
just with the waves lapping on the sand there would be a good earthing opportunity. Wouldn't it? You got the conductivity of the salt water and the sand and
I mean it sounds a bit woo woo, but it's not really. It is grounded in science.
Oh.
Integrative and lifestyle medicine strategies should include earthing, grounding, and routinely walking barefoot outdoors.
You feel good when you do it. I go for a walk barefoot, and you just feel good, and your feet feel good as well. It's like a massage for your feet that you don't get with shoes on, because you're getting those little stones and sticks and uneven surface underneath, and your foot's contouring to it. And
it has to move, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it doesn't have the same I'm stuck in a shoe cushioned away.
It's like loosening up a rigid bit of plywood, which is what your foot gets like if you wear too many of the foot coffins.
Yeah,
and you go out and you actually walk in nature, and your foot's contouring and adjusting, and it's just your feet feel good afterwards.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, and as much as the asphalt on the road might not give you the electrons supply, but it is a good massage effect. So particularly with the thick crumbly bitumen, walking on that at first it will hurt, but if you keep on trying it, like 5, then 10 minutes, then 15, then 20 minutes a day, walk the dog barefoot on the road, it feels great. Such a massage effect.
Don't do what I did when I was a kid and when your dad parks the car about 10-minute walk away from the beach, and you're walking along the hot road in summer. Burned my feet pretty good that day.
Yeah, doing the hot bitumen dance.
Trying to step on the little white bits to try.
Dodging from car shadow to car shadow. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh, they're the good old days.
Or the hot sand and the beach before you get in the water.
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah.
You know you're alive then.
Yeah. And it's funny when you're laying on the beach and you're watching someone get up for the first time to walk to the water, and you see them walking normally, and then you see them,
speed up,
and speed up, and make a bolt for the ocean. But mate, heaps of benefits, natural benefits for going barefoot, and particularly lower back issues are a chronic issue with modern day life. If you think about having a flat foot on the ground, everything is in alignment. Your spine's aligned, your hips are aligned. As soon as you tilt that heel up, it knocks everything out of whack. Your hips tilt, your knees are then also stressed, and that hip tilt can then also put stress on your lower back. So, people suffering a lower back problem, try going barefoot for at least 20, 30 minutes a day.
Well, I remember you saying very early in one of the very early on podcasts, might have been your introduction, that you kind of fixed your knee pain through and didn't need a fairly invasive
tibial osteotomy.
Long recovery surgery by just going barefoot.
Yeah.
And strengthening it over time.
Yep.
Probably the same amount of time that it would have taken for a recovery of a major surgery.
Yeah, I think we discussed that in our President of the World
is that what it was?
Session. Yeah, when I recommended going barefoot. But that was a surgeon wanted to cut a wedge out of my tibia to relieve pressure on the medial aspect of my knee.
Once again, another highlight of the modern
fix the problem.
Modern,
with all the risk that goes with the possibility of bone infections and complications and all sorts of
2 years off work. So after doing some research and looking at foot health, I come to the conclusion that, and I had a look at my foot and my right leg, which was the right knee, It was collapsing as I squatted. It was collapsing as I stood, just naturally, from years and years of just poor footwear or that muscle becoming weak, and that created knee pain.
How did you go down that rabbit hole, Roo? What put you on that path of sort of looking at your feet? Like you've been to speak to the surgeon, obviously, and he was recommending this sort of radical. Did that stimulate you to search in general, and then feet came up?
I'd probably heard of things at that time on Ben Greenfield's podcast and stuff like that. Like biohackers like him, who had maybe discussed it, and that maybe prompted me to look down that avenue. Yeah. Otherwise, I probably would have been ignorant to it and would have gone, "Oh, a surgeon knows best. I'll just go and do it." Just another example of people taking health into their own hands.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. Well, let's hope that sort of barefoot and barefoot shoes becomes fashionable.
Well, I would like, I'd like to. I often walk through shopping centres barefoot. People go, like you're a
hobo.
Look like a dirty
this
hippie.
bum.
Yeah.
Well, I'm actually the healthy one here.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not. It's probably filthy ground, isn't it?
Nah, they're clean as, mate.
Germaphobe.
No, they got cleaners in there cleaning the thing.
Yeah, just give your feet a wash when you get home. Yeah.
Mick, you got anything else to add, mate?
No, I think you guys have covered it all off in terms of the earthing and the grounding and, the utilisation of the positive electrons within the earth. I tend to agree with Jonesy. I think the science, if you look at the structures within the human body, whether it's a cell or a gene or an atom or subatomically, we seem to be electrically charged beings, and so I think that it's actually pretty common sense and commonly accepted now that that we are able to positively charge ourselves through this grounding with the earth. And certainly a lot of the research I looked into in preparation for this also indicated that, that there's sort of substantial benefits in terms of inflammation, immunity, assisting in physiological disease as well as psychological disease, right down to things like sleep, which I think we'll cover in the future as well.
Yeah.
So I think just simply getting back to nature, taking these fucking shoes off and grounding ourselves into the earth.
It's very ancestral.
Very ancestral. Yeah, very much so.
I heard a good quote, or read a good quote. It said, a good podiatrist is the one who is trying to get you off orthotics as quick as possible. And I think society is fighting probably another medical. I'm not bagging podiatrists here because they do have a place, but I think just the prolonged use of orthotics and arch support mechanisms are probably doing more harm than good. I think
quick fix.
Yeah, I think maybe for some sort of acute issues, they might help, but prolonged use could have a detrimental effect. I'm not a podiatrist, and a podiatrist could argue the point. I guess he might have to because it's his profession.
Back it up, yeah.
But I just see that. I mean, if you had a sore neck or you injured a neck muscle and you had a neck brace, would you wear that for 10 years, make your neck stronger? I'd say you'd probably take it off after,
That's a good point.
a couple of weeks. If you had a cast on a broken arm or a fracture, would you leave that on for 6 months? Or
It's funny, isn't it? Because every single person, I would imagine, would come to the conclusion that if you wore a neck brace for a year, then all the musculature in your neck is going to shrink and not do its job. And yet we do similar stuff to our feet, where you go to the chemist and there's all sorts of inserts and orthotics and things you can buy to prop up your arches and all that sort of stuff. Well, you're not working the musculature in your feet to do its job, and it's just going to accentuate the problem, isn't it? So.
Exactly, yeah. Yep. Yeah. I would just recommend for people just 30 minutes a day. Try walking bare feet. Doesn't have to be on the road, just walking around the house. 30 minutes a day. Just go barefoot.
That's the key, and it's sort of slow and steady. Like, don't just jump in and start doing 10K runs with bare feet because it's not going to go well for you. Don't think you can beat your plantar fasciitis by just completely running barefoot from day one, because it's not going to go well for you. But slow incremental change.
Mate, we haven't even touched plantar fasciitis.
No.
How many guys do you hear having
bloody
plantar
epidemic.
fasciitis?
Epidemic these days. Do you reckon cavemen had a lot of plantar fasciitis back in the day? I'm going to gamble and say they probably didn't.
Patella tendonitis.
Yeah.
Or, which is, they're called runner's knee.
Yeah.
It's kind of outside sore ligament from running they say running too much, but that's another big one that probably could easily be fixed.
Because those that function that I talked about walking before, it's those plantar fascia that really activate underneath your foot that help that foot become a springboard for propulsion. And plantar fasciitis is it's an inflammation, isn't it, of those fascia? I guess they're probably just not being used as they should.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other one is Achilles tendinopathy, and I think you could throw in knee tendinopathy with that as well. And I think it relates into everything you've been talking about there, Rue, in terms of we're not walking or running with these ancestral biomechanics. So we're putting undue stress on tendons and joints that we probably aren't meant to.
Yeah, that study that I referenced earlier, barefoot running doesn't prevent injuries. They're talking about the main running injuries: patellofemoral pain syndrome, which is runner's knee, tibial stress fractures, plantar fasciitis, Achilles tendonitis, all itises, which are inflammation, based on the fact that we're not biomechanically moving as we did as ancestral humans.
Well, even look at modern footy players and how many stress fractures they get in their feet now,
and backs, and
and all the rest of it too, all the wear and tear. I mean, they do a tremendous amount of kilometres, obviously running, because they're very high level athletes to play AFL footy. But I think
well, we talked about boots before. None of those are anatomically correct, are they?
Exactly. You got that very pointed toe. You got that moulded sole that doesn't really move. Flex. You couldn't really design a much worse, short of playing in high heels.
No, I often wonder sometimes whether there's AFL players that are sort of like on our wavelength about foot health, and I often wonder because they would have boot design at their fingertips. I wonder whether there's any that have asked for wide toe box footy boots.
It's big business footwear industry, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. Well, they got sponsors to consider and stuff like that, but surely a sponsor might be able to make it tailor-made.
Well, imagine someone came out, imagine a big footy star came out and said, I'm wearing these.
Dusty Martin comes out or something and says, I'm doing barefoot, and everyone's going,
imagine how many of those
cool is barefoot.
Yeah. But for anyone that wants to get into the foot gloves, shoes, the Vibrams, you can pick them up from different websites and that, but I often get mine from wildfiresports.com.au. They often have pretty good price Vibrams, so they're the foot gloves. And you can go back to just the originals. They're often the cheapest, so I think you can get them for roughly about $150, $170, which is around the same price as a running shoe. There's also barefootinc.com.au. They offer a good range and good prices. And Vibram website itself, so vibram.com. That's where you can get your foot gloves.
They have some pretty good sales from time to time.
Yeah.
I've used that first one, was it Wildfire?
Wildfire Sports.
Yeah, I've used that before, and they had some pretty good discounts.
Yeah.
The really good thing about Vivo Barefoot, which the ones I've used, you can return them and they fix them up and then either give them back to you or sell them on.
Yeah. They sell recycled shoes or something as well. Like you can buy.
Well, that's what you do.
Second-hand recycled shoe off them. That's been that's really cool.
So my kids tear through theirs. I put a lot of kilometres running through them, so I've send them back, and they give you a discount code for your next time. 25% off or something like that. Yeah, it's pretty good. It's a good little.
Vivo Barefoots are where I go for my my going out sort of wide toe box shoes. Do they also sell
stepping out shoes?
My stepping out shoes.
Yeah.
Do they also sell the foot gloves?
No,
they don't. No. So Vivo Barefoot for people that want to sort of try out
VIVO. Yep.
VIVO. Yep.
Which is Vibram's different. VIBRAM.
Yeah.
We were talking about before.
Yeah,
they're
different
the gloves. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Vivo Barefoot ones are more, I guess, more socially acceptable than the gloves. They've got, they're all enclosed like a regular shoe, but yeah, look, we were talking about before. They've got a big toe box.
Yeah.
They give you a big toe, room to move, and
minimal
flat.
Yep.
Yeah. So they do take a little bit to get used to as well, but yeah.
Yeah, you do notice a lot of people with Vivos.
Yeah. There's a few. It's starting to pick up some momentum.
A lot of Merrill's getting around too.
Merrill's a good one.
Yep.
Yeah. We've got anything else? We've touched on sort of benefits, sort of what we do, how we've.
I've got one last comment, which is that the thing I love the most about going for a walk in actual bare feet in nature is that it just puts you in a real mindful, sort of mindset. Mindful mindset. That's probably a poor choice of words.
A mindful state. Yeah.
A mindful state because you're actually forced to sort of select where you're going to put your foot a little bit, and it's just a really nice. It's almost a bit meditative.
More of awareness of your surroundings.
It forces you to be in the moment.
Yeah.
So your mind's not 1,000 miles away, and you're just sort of trudging through with your foot coffins, and you're just banging through the bush and hurting everything. You're actually thinking about, I'm going to step there, and I'm going to place my foot like that, and it's just a really nice way to spend a bit of time. And I find it to be quite a relaxing, meditative sort of way to be.
Great point, Smitty. Great point.
Connecting with nature a bit more.
You become more aware of where you're stepping, where you're walking.
Yeah, you feel like you're in nature, not on nature.
Yes.
For want of a better description.
Yep.
Yeah.
Lovely.
I like it.
Yep.
Nice way to finish.
Great way to finish, Smitty. Smitty always finishes with some great
really good.
He's like Yoda.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you just say that with like the words around the opposite way? Like
Barefoot we do.
But if anyone who's Instagram account, there's a great Instagram account that I follow called the Foot Collective.
They've
got some awesome insights and just remedial health or training things for your feet. Walking along a cylindrical bar, those sort of things. Have a look at those on Instagram. They're a fantastic resource.
Yep, excellent. Yeah, and we've got our email up and running. modernancestralman.
Have you had any abusive emails, mate?
Plenty.
Yeah.
All of them.
Fielding them.
You guys are talking shit. Show me your medical certificates.
You guys aren't doctors.
Yeah.
Nope.
modernancestralman@gmail.com. Keep them coming in.
That's in the show notes now.
In the show notes. So click on those. Let us know.
And I think it would be worthwhile saying, Jonesy, that we do welcome support and challenge.
Definitely.
We've never professed to be experts. We're just four mates getting together, putting out there things that have worked for us. But we certainly welcome anyone who has been tuning in, who does want to throw an email out there, challenging some of these beliefs. Please do. We welcome that as well.
Agree, disagree.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Tell
if
us what we're
out there
doing wrong,
you
what
want to
we
hear
could do
about,
better.
let us know.
Yeah,
and sort of an interesting, quirky topic that you want us to chat about.
Yeah.
I'm always keen to do a bit of research if it's something I haven't heard of and give an opinion.
Or if there's any sort of academically inclined person with some of these subjects we've talked about who is a professional in that area, get in touch with us, and we can maybe hook up a phone connection or something like that, just to get more of a professional insight.
Yeah,
I mean, we're just talking as everyday fellas who have had a crack and tried things out for our own health and fitness, but we would love to have a discussion with someone who is a professional about a certain area.
Because
we can set that up.
We're all inquisitive. We'll ask questions. People can send their questions in. We can ask them as well.
Might be a good way for someone to promote a business or promote their own.
Yeah, that would be great.
Because the multitude of listeners we've got worldwide.
Yeah,
they could really,
I think,
do the promotion.
And I think we'll probably look at getting a few special guests on.
Yeah.
So that would be good to see, what people are thinking, what they'd like to hear about.
Yeah.
Who'd they like us to get on?
Yeah, because we've got some listeners in the US. You were saying, Smitty.
Yep. Getting quite a few hits from the US now. So
if anyone that's listening in the US, thanks for listening. That's awesome. We're a couple of Aussies down here, down under.
Can we edit that bit out? We're close to the end, so maybe we'll edit that. But very good. So get in touch with us. Yeah, we'd love to hear from you.
Good to see you, boys.
Good.
All right.
Enjoy your week.
It's always good, fellas.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah. See you next time.
See you, boys.